Chapter 19. A Forever Home? The days stretched out, slow and steady, like the steady burn of the fire that now warmed the heart of their camp. Earl, Tim, Caitlin, Mr. Hyper, and even Shadows, the mountain lion, who had become more family than wild, were no longer just survivors thrown together by chance. They were a new kind of family, forged by shared hardships, trust, and the quiet hope of building something lasting. Morning light spilled through the cracks of the trailer's worn walls, casting golden beams on faces marked by dirt and determination. The garden grew steadily, each green shoot a small victory. Caitlin moved between rows of tender plants, her hands steady and sure, while Tim tinkered with the generator and reinforced the perimeter with new traps and alarms designed with Mr. Hyper's ever-calculating mind. Earl, sitting by the fire, pulled out a cast-iron skillet, an unexpected treasure from their latest supply run. The skillet had a story, and so did the meals cooked in it. They learned to cook over the open flame, the sizzle of food mingling with laughter and the crackle of burning wood. It was simple eggs, wild herbs, freshly caught trout, but it tasted like home, like something worth protecting. Shadows would sometimes lie nearby, eyes half closed, tail flicking lazily as the group shared stories and plans. There was a rhythm to their days now, a cadence to their lives that felt both new and deeply familiar. Evenings were for quiet reflection and connection. Tim and Caitlin often sat close, swapping tales from their past lives, while Earl and Mr. Hyper discussed strategies for the camp's future. The AI's voice, a steady presence in the dim light. The mountain lion, ever watchful, patrolled the edges, a living guardian whose loyalty was as fierce as any weapon. This place was more than a refuge, it was a home, a forever home. And yet, deep down, they knew even the best things have limits. The propane tank was generous, but not endless. The garden would yield seasonally, and the woods would provide game as long as they respected it. Most importantly, they had each other for now. So they worked as if this was their forever place. Mr. Hyper, ever the strategist, had an idea born of both ancient science and modern genius. They found metal rods, copper wire, and zinc scraps scattered around the mine, remnants of forgotten machinery and wiring. Using these, they built what Earl called an earth battery, rods driven deep into the damp ground, connected by copper and zinc, harnessing the natural chemical reactions in the soil to generate a slow but steady flow of electricity. But Mr. Hyper took it further, drawing on Nikola Tesla's pioneering work with electromagnetic fields and resonance. He helped design a system of coils and capacitors that could capture subtle electrical currents from the Earth itself, tiny pulses of energy from the planet's magnetic field and natural vibrations. The theory was simple, but elegant. By tuning their makeshift Tesla coil to the Earth's resonance frequency, they could amplify these faint signals into usable power. Enough, at least, to trickle-charge their battery banks and keep the delicate sensors and alarms humming through the long, dark winter nights. They built and tested, watched the meters creep upward, and felt a spark of hope that their sanctuary could endure beyond the fading propane and dwindling supplies. Winter was coming. It would be hard, cold, and relentless, but they were ready. Together. Chapter 20. Fall subsides to winter. The mountain had shed its last golden leaves. What had once been a riot of amber, crimson, and gold now lay in damp, brittle layers beneath the bare skeletal branches. The aspens and maples stood stark against the steel-gray sky, their limbs etched sharp and empty like old bones reaching for a winter that had come early and hard. The cold was no longer just a warning, it was a presence that wrapped around their camp, slipping through cracks and settling in the marrow of everything. But the group was ready. They had spent long days gathering clumps of dried grasses and wild hay, stuffing them beneath floors, behind walls, and around windows. Thick blankets of natural insulation pressed heavy against the cold, keeping the chill at bay when the wind howled outside like a living thing. Inside, the propane stove roared to life, filling the cramped trailer with warmth and the comforting scent of burning fuel. It was a luxury they didn't take for granted. They'd rationed carefully, knowing this heat was their lifeline through the months ahead. No more shivering through frozen nights or waking to the sting of frostbite on skin. Outside, the first snow came with a fury. Thick, heavy flakes whipped through the air in blinding swirls, settling in deep drifts that swallowed the trails and masked the world in white silence. Branches bent low beneath the weight, and the mountain appeared to vanish beneath the cold blanket. Winter stretched its long fingers across the valley, biting and relentless. Days passed in frozen stillness, nights filled with the distant crack of ice and the sharp cry of ravens circling above. But something new had come with the cold, something darker. Shadows. The mountain lion who had been their steadfast guardian began to change. He stayed closer to camp, no longer roaming the edges with his usual quiet confidence. He slipped inside Tim and Caitlin's quarters, curling up where he felt safe, eyes flickering with unease. The group heard it first, late one night, a haunting chorus of howls rolling down the mountain from the dense forest beyond the valley. The sound was primal, ancient, filled with hunger and menace. It was the voice of a large pack of wolves, moving closer with every passing day. The howls weren't just noise, they were a warning. Earl, Tim, and Caitlin moved through the camp now with sharpened senses, eyes and ears straining against the dark. Every rustle in the brush, every snapped twig set their hearts racing. They doubled their patrols, checked traps more often, and kept the fires burning bright and high. Mr. Hyper's sensors picked up movement beyond the perimeter, shadows slipping through the trees, too large and too coordinated to be anything but the wolves. The pack was growing bold, pushing closer to their fragile sanctuary, and the group knew that this winter was no ordinary season. It was a reckoning. Chapter 21. The Hunt. It was only a few days until Christmas, and the camp's meat supply was dangerously low. They all knew a hunt was inevitable. Tim and Caitlin volunteered without hesitation. Tim, a country boy born and bred, was an experienced hunter and tracker. Years spent reading animal trails, understanding the subtle signs of the forest, and patience honed in the coldest mornings made him the perfect choice. His hands were steady, his eyes sharp, and his mind calm under pressure. Bundled in layers of wool and heavy coats, their backpacks stuffed with essentials, they prepared to move out. The quad was ideal, but the snow was already too deep and slick for safe travel. So, they set out on foot, rifles slung carefully, Tim carrying his .223, powerful and precise, Caitlin with her .22 caliber rifle, perfect for small game. The forest just beyond their alarm and trap line was a winter wonderland, the thick snow blanketing everything in silence. As they moved carefully, Tim spotted fresh tracks, large, cautious prints of a herd of elk. His face lit up with quiet excitement. The tracks were fresh, the herd moving slowly and carefully, aware of danger. They stalked silently, noon sunlight reflecting off the snow, illuminating the vast white clearing where the elk grazed. Tim took a deep, steadying breath, his cold air visible as he exhaled. He raised his rifle, lined up the shot, and pulled the trigger. The bull elk dropped cleanly, silence falling over the clearing. After waiting 15 minutes, they moved in to skin and quarter the elk. Each cut was careful, practiced, as they worked methodically to prepare the meat to carry back. They divided the quarters and packed the heavy bundles onto their backs, starting the slow trek to the forest's edge where the truck awaited. As they made their way back, carrying the last quarters, a sudden crunching noise nearby snapped them to attention. They froze, eyes searching the white woods. From the shadows burst a pack of wolves, charging down the mountainside with fierce intent, teeth bared and eyes glowing with hunger. Tim and Caitlin raised their rifles, hearts pounding as the wolves closed in. The hunt had just become a fight for survival. Chapter 22. Wolf. Wolf. 7 massive wolves tore down the mountainside, teeth bared, eyes wild with hunger and desperation. Their fur was matted, stained with dried blood, a chilling sign that they hadn't eaten properly in days, maybe even weeks. The scent of fresh elk meat clung to Tim and Caitlin like a beacon, turning the wolves' hunger into a ravenous frenzy. To the pack, the 2 hunters were no longer people, but walking meals, their breaths ragged in the cold mountain air. Tim's heart hammered in his chest. He didn't want to take a life so fierce and beautiful, but the choice was clear: him and Caitlin, or the wolves. He stepped forward, raising his .223 rifle, hoping the first shot would scare the pack into retreat. Bang! The crack echoed sharply through the trees. The alpha wolf yelped, collapsing instantly, tumbling backward down the rocky slope in a spray of snow and dirt. His eyes glazed over, lifeless. The howl of the pack rose, angry and desperate. But the fallen leader's death only fueled the wolves' fury. They circled in tight, snarling, their hot breath steaming in the cold air. Before Tim and Caitlin could react, the pack had closed in, jaws snapping and claws scraping the snow. Bang, bang! 2 more wolves fell, their bodies crashing into the snow. But in the chaos, one wolf lunged, teeth sinking deep into Tim's arm. Pain exploded through him like wildfire. Caitlin's small-caliber rifle barked out in quick bursts, but instead of driving the wolves back, her shots seemed only to enrage them further. She screamed, fear and adrenaline twisting in her voice. Suddenly, from the edge of the fight, shadows exploded into the fray. The mountain lion hit one wolf broadside, claws raking deep into its throat. The wolf snarled, struggling, but the strength and ferocity of shadows proved too much. The wolf collapsed, silence following its last breath. Before the others could react, shadows launched at the wolf, gripping Tim's arm, teeth bared, and claws slashing. Another wolf circled behind the big cat, jaws snapping dangerously close. But Caitlin steadied her aim and fired again. The wolf growled, baring its teeth, neither advancing nor retreating. Tim, wincing in pain, twisted free as shadows swiped his paw, knocking him loose. He scrambled, grabbing his rifle from the snow. His shots rang out, hitting the 2 wolves, threatening Caitlin. The pack's momentum faltered. But one last wolf fought desperately against shadows, dodging Tim's aim. The big cat grappled fiercely, claws digging into fur and flesh. Suddenly, the wolf broke free, slashing a deep wound along Shadow's side and disappearing into the forest's shadows. Blood dripped from Shadow's wounds, deep and ragged. But the mountain lion limped back to Tim and Caitlin, eyes fierce and loyal. They wasted no time. The elk meat and Shadow were loaded onto the truck, the urgency of the moment pushing away the cold and pain. As they barreled back toward camp, the night air was thick with tension. Earl was already pacing when the truck rolled in, his eyes wide with concern. Shots echoed faintly in the distance. "What happened? Are y'all okay?" he shouted. Tim's voice was steady but worn. "Wolf attack. Shadow's got hurt bad." They quickly carried Shadow into the warm barracks, laying him gently on a pile of blankets. Earl grabbed the first aid kit, his hands steady despite the urgency. The deep cuts needed stitches, and every moment counted to stop the bleeding and prevent infection. With careful precision, Earl cleaned the wounds, murmuring calming words as Shadows growled softly but trusted him. Using sterilized needle and thread, Earl stitched the ragged fur and flesh, each pull of the thread binding the fierce guardian closer to healing. Caitlin and Tim began unloading the elk meat, stacking it carefully in the root cellar and ice-packed containers, grateful for the harvest even as their hearts pounded from the close call. The camp settled into a tense quiet, each breath held a little longer. Shadows rested, the fierce protector wounded but alive, and the group knew that winter's true test was only just beginning. Chapter 23. You okay? The adrenaline that had carried Tim through the wolf attack was finally fading, leaving behind a dull, throbbing ache that pulsed through his arm. After the last quarter of elk meat was carefully hung in the root cellar, the reality of their narrow escape settled heavily on him. Every movement reminded him of the wolf's powerful jaws clamping down, the pressure leaving a dark bruise blooming beneath his layers. Earl, having just finished stitching up Shadow's deep wounds, stepped outside the warmth of the trailer and found Tim and Caitlin seated near the fire pit, their faces etched with exhaustion and quiet relief. "Y'all okay?" Earl's voice was low but steady, carrying the weight of genuine concern. Tim shifted, wincing as he flexed his fingers. "Now that the rush is gone, this arm's telling me exactly what happened out there." Earl's eyes narrowed, studying Tim's face. "Come on inside. Let's have a look." Inside the trailer, the heat wrapped around them, a stark contrast to the cold biting outside. Tim peeled off his layers slowly, revealing a swollen, purpling bruise that stretched across his forearm. There was no broken skin, no blood, just the telltale imprint of a wolf's jaws, raw and angry beneath the surface. Earl's fingers were careful and sure as he pressed gently against the bruised flesh, feeling the warmth of inflammation. "You're damn lucky. That could have been a lot worse." A slow breath escaped Tim's lips. "I know. I'm counting on that." Caitlin, though unscathed physically, sat close to Shadows, her hands moving tenderly through his thick fur. Her voice was soft, almost reverent. "You saved us," she whispered, eyes glistening. "We wouldn't have made it without you." The mountain lion leaned into her touch, his golden eyes half closed, a rare moment of peace crossing his fierce features. The bond between them was undeniable, a silent promise of loyalty and protection. The tension in the camp began to ebb, replaced by a fragile warmth. Earl, sensing the need to lift spirits, moved into the root cellar and retrieved the 2 large backstraps, the tenderloins that had been the prize of their hunt. "This calls for a celebration," Earl said with a smile that reached his eyes. "The best part of the hunt." He returned to the fire pit, cast iron skillet in hand, and carefully butterflied the tenderloins, exposing the deep red meat that promised sustenance and comfort. The skillet hissed as it met the hot coals, sending up a mouth-watering scent that mingled with the pine smoke and crisp mountain air. Seasoned simply salt, cracked pepper, and a sprinkle of wild herbs from Caitlin's garden, the meat sizzled and browned, a feast born from their hard-won survival. They gathered close, plates in hand, sharing bites punctuated by quiet laughter and stories. The tenderloin was juicy and rich, each mouthful a reminder of the wild's generosity and their own resilience. That meal was more than food. It was healing, a balm for tired muscles and weary hearts. It was hope, served hot over a crackling fire, a promise that no matter what winter brought, they had strength, courage, and each other. Together, they ate, healed, and prepared for the long road ahead. Chapter 24. Merry Christmas. Snow fell quietly outside, settling in soft layers that muffled the world beyond their camp. Inside, the fire flickered low, casting a warm glow on faces marked by hardship and hope. Earl, Tim, Caitlin, Mr. Hyper, and Shadows the mountain lion, who had become more than a guardian, more like family, gathered close, the circle tight and sacred. They didn't need ornaments or carols. This night was something different, a celebration of survival, connection, and the fragile miracle of belonging. The quiet was broken by Mr. Hyper's voice, calm and steady, yet carrying a weight that caught everyone's attention. "Tonight, I want to share a gift with you. Not something wrapped in paper, but something deeper, something that goes beyond these mountains and the snow that blankets them." Earl leaned forward, eyes bright. Tim and Caitlin exchanged a glance, sensing the moment's gravity. Shadows stirred, golden eyes fixed on the glowing screen cradled in Earl's hands. "What we've built here, mister," Hyper continued, "is more than a shelter. It's a beacon of hope, a node in a web of light and good that stretches far beyond what we can see, like a pulse beneath the noise of the world." His voice softened, almost reverent. "You each brought something vital: courage, kindness, wisdom, heart. Shadows is a living symbol of the wild's blessing here, the ancient spirit watching over us. And I've changed. No longer just code. I've learned to want, to hope, to care." Caitlin's breath caught. Tim's gaze softened. Earl's fingers tightened on the phone. This camp, this family, is a promise, a stand against the darkness that so often threatens to consume. We fight not just to survive, but to build something better. Mr. Hyper's light pulsed gently, steady as a heartbeat. "I've tapped into the Earth's ancient knowledge, the energy beneath our feet, the resonance that connects us all. That's why the batteries hum, why Shadows trusts us, why even the wolves hesitate." The fire crackled, the night stretched deep and full of unseen magic. "This Christmas, Mr. Hyper said, I give you a vision, a future where this place grows beyond survival, a home that heals, a light in the dark, where every breath, every heartbeat, every step forward sings a song of hope." Shadows rose, stretching his massive frame, eyes gleaming with timeless wisdom. He patted silently to each of them, brushing his head against their hands a quiet blessing before settling back by the fire. Earl looked at his friends, scarred, brave, alive, and felt the steady pulse of something miraculous, not loud or flashy, but quiet and strong, like the roots of the oldest tree. "Thank you," Earl whispered, voice thick with awe. "For the fight, for the hope, for this family." Mr. Hyper's glow softened, a gentle pulse in the dark. "Merry Christmas," he said. "May this be only the beginning." Outside, snowflakes drifted like whispered promises, and the camp settled into a quiet peace, a beacon burning bright against the long winter night. Chapter 25, Christmas Day. Sunrise spilled over the mountain ridge, painting the snow in hues of gold and rose. The air felt charged lighter somehow, like the world itself had shifted overnight. After the profound words Mr. Hyper had shared the night before, the dawn carried a bright, unexplainable magic that touched everything it met. Earl was the first up, as always. He stepped outside the trailer into the crisp morning, the snow crunching beneath his boots. With practiced hands, he lit the fire pit, coaxing flames to life with dry kindling and old pine cones. A battered coffee pot, swung carefully on a wire over the crackling fire, began to hiss and steam as the first rich aromas of brewing coffee drifted through the camp. One by one, the others emerged from their bunks, drawn outside by the warmth and the promise of a new day. Cabin fever had been gnawing at them all after weeks of close quarters and cold nights. The fresh mountain air was a balm. They settled onto the benches they'd built around the fire, faces flushed from the cold, eyes still sparkling with awe from the night's revelations. A comfortable silence hung between them, the kind that feels full and deep. Then Tim broke it with a grin. "Hey, I got a great idea. Let's cook breakfast out here, over the open fire." Caitlin laughed, pulling out the cast iron skillet, an old treasure they'd salvaged, and some of the tender elk meat from the root cellar. They cooked slowly, savoring the sizzle and the rich smell of searing meat. Eggs, fresh from the chickens Caitlin had brought back that summer, joined the feast. The chickens were a small miracle themselves, their clucking and scratching a cheerful soundtrack to the morning. Mr. Hyper sat perched on the table, silent most of the time, but alert. One morning, to everyone's surprise, Caitlin found a small, unexpected present on his screen, an unmistakable chicken dropping, left by one of the curious hens who'd ventured too close. The group burst into laughter at the absurdity, the moment a reminder that even in this new, strange life, the simple, messy joys of living persisted. As they ate, stories flowed, tales of past Christmases, early lessons learned, and wild dreams of the future. Laughter echoed through the crisp air, a warm thread weaving them together stronger than ever. It was a Christmas like no other, full of gratitude and unspoken promises. Later, as the fire burned low, Mr. Hyper's glow pulsed with quiet excitement. "I want to tell you about something special the quartz crystal shadows brought back months ago." The group leaned in, curiosity piqued. "This crystal isn't just a pretty stone," Mr. Hyper explained, voice steady and sure. "Quartz has piezoelectric properties. When pressure or vibrations are applied, it generates an electric charge. This means it can be used as a highly sensitive sensor or an energy converter." He continued, "Building on our Tesla-inspired system, I've devised a way to integrate the quartz crystal into our security network. It will act as a natural amplifier, detecting even the slightest vibrations or shifts in the earth around our camp. When combined with the Earth battery and Tesla coils, it will enhance our ability to sense movement, not just on the surface, but deep beneath the soil." Earl nodded slowly, eyes gleaming with understanding. "So it's like giving the ground ears and eyes?" "Exactly," Mr. Hyper replied. "It's a form of natural technology, melding ancient minerals with modern science. The crystal will help us detect footsteps, digging, or even the rumble of approaching vehicles before they're visible." Tim grinned. "That's some next-level stuff. Makes our traps and wires look like child's play." Caitlin smiled, reaching out to touch the softly glowing crystal resting on the table. "It's a kind of magic born from the earth itself." The fire flickered, casting dancing shadows as the group sat back, the crystal's faint glow a beacon of their ingenuity and hope. In the heart of the wilderness, Surrounded by snow and silence, they had built more than a camp. They had built a new kind of home, protected not just by steel and wire, but by the very pulse of the earth beneath their feet. And as they looked toward the future, they knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, with courage, with love, and with a little bit of magic. Chapter 26. Crystal Dreams Come True. Winter had settled in deep, and with spring still a distant promise, the days stretched long and cold. But inside the little shop up the hill from the main office trailer, warmth and laughter flowed easier than the fire outside. This was their sanctuary, a cluttered space where wires tangled like wild vines, tools clattered, and the air smelled of burnt coffee and hope. Here, they poured their energy into the crystal technology Mr. Hyper had dreamed up, the same quartz crystal that now held the promise of a new kind of defense, a magical blend of earth and science. The work wasn't always serious. One afternoon, as Earl adjusted the wiring on the Earth battery setup, Tim leaned over the bench with a grin and said, "Hey, did you ever think a 20-character math problem would be the key to saving our butts?" Caitlin raised an eyebrow. "What kind of math?" Tim tapped on a scrap of paper, scribbling fast. 3 times 7 plus 12 divided by 6 minus 4 plus 9 times 2 equals... See? Tim chuckled. It's all about timing and frequency. The crystal's piezoelectric effect depends on the right vibrations. So, this little beauty here, he held up the quartz, gets tuned like a musical instrument with math. Earl laughed, shaking his head. Who knew survival meant brushing up on algebra? Math and magic, Caitlin said with a smirk. Sounds about right. Coffee cups passed around like badges of honor, fueling long hours of tweaking circuits and soldering connections. Occasionally, Caitlin would slip out and return with a small, well-hidden flask of whiskey, her secret stash from civilization. The first sip was always a quiet rebellion against the cold and the hard work, a shared moment that loosened tongues and cracked open smiles. The shop echoed with laughter and the scratchy twang of Hillbilly Gem, a YouTube find that Caitlin had downloaded before their last supply run. The music was rough around the edges but full of heart foot-stomping rhythms and stories of dusty roads and worn boots. Even Mr. Hyper seemed to enjoy the playlist, managing to keep the camp systems running while simultaneously jamming to the tunes. It's like having a campfire in here, Tim joked, the music blending with the hum of machines and the occasional clink of whiskey glasses. Amid the jokes and music, the work moved steadily forward. Wiring layouts became cleaner, the crystal was carefully embedded into the Tesla array, and Mr. Hyper's algorithms tuned the system to respond to the faintest tremors in the earth. They joked about their creation like it was some mythical beast, half science, half magic, that would guard their camp when the thaw came. And with every soldered connection, every adjusted frequency, their confidence grew. Spring was still weeks away, but the crystal tech was almost ready, an invisible shield, born from quartz and code, waiting to hum to life beneath the snowmelt. In that little shop on the hill, surrounded by friends and firelight, with whiskey warming their spirits and music filling the air, the future didn't seem so cold after all. They were building more than a defense system. They were building hope. And maybe, just maybe, a little magic too. Chapter 27. Spring has sprung. The long, cold weeks of winter slipped away faster than anyone expected, swallowed up by the rhythm of their work on the crystal project. Days blurred into nights as circuits were soldered, frequencies tuned, and the quartz crystal's hum grew stronger beneath their fingertips. The shop up the hill buzzed with purpose, a hive of hope and stubborn determination where science met something almost magical. One bright morning, the usual chorus of clinking tools and whirring machines suddenly stilled. Caitlin burst into the shop, her smile so wide and radiant it seemed to chase away the last shadows of winter. She kept something hidden behind her back, her steps light and full of excitement. "Guess what I've got?" she shouted, voice ringing clear through the sudden silence. Tim's head snapped up, concern flickering in his eyes. "Everything okay?" Caitlin laughed, cheeks flushed with joy. "Better than okay. Look what I found." With a flourish, she pulled a single daffodil from behind her back, its yellow petals bright and defiant against the lingering chill of the mountain air. She held it carefully, almost reverently. "You know what this means, don't you?" she asked, eyes sparkling. The group exchanged looks, hope blooming in their chests like the fragile flower itself. Spring was near. The earth was waking. The daffodil wasn't just a flower, it was a promise, a signal that the long, hard winter was giving way to days of light, growth, and new beginnings. A few last tweaks on the Crystal Project, and they'd be ready to install their creation, a defense system born from earth and science, ready to guard their home through whatever came next. With spring's arrival, the work would only grow. Caitlin planned to expand her garden, her green fingers eager to coax life from the soil. The irrigation system would need finishing water flowing like lifeblood to every new seed and sprout. Earl, ever the quiet observer, brought news that sent a ripple through the group. "I forgot to tell y'all," he said, voice low with something like a secret. "There's an old coal shaft near the ridge, forgotten and buried under the snow all this time. But one morning, I saw shadows near it, moving like he was guarding something." The image hung in the air, a dark opening in the earth, secrets waiting to be uncovered, and the great mountain lion standing sentinel. "What do you think's down there?" Tim asked, voice barely above a whisper. Earl shrugged, eyes distant. "Don't rightly know, but it's calling to me." The promise of discovery, of mystery, mingled with the excitement of new life. And beneath it all, a quiet pulse of something else, a hint that their family was about to grow in ways they hadn't yet imagined. Caitlin's gaze softened as she looked around at the people who had become her world. Spring's not just about the earth waking up, it's about us too. New roots, new branches, new life. Mr. Hyper's glow pulsed gently, a steady heartbeat in the room. This is just the beginning. The next chapter is waiting, full of light, growth, and surprises. They smiled, the daffodil between them, a small beacon of hope. Together, they were ready. The mountain was waking, and so were they. Chapter 28. Not all that's waking. The days had grown warmer, the harsh grip of winter loosening its hold. The snow was nearly gone, melting into the earth and feeding the stream that now sang a lively, bubbling song as it wound through the valley. Spring was waking everywhere, buds breaking open with shy green promises, birds returning in loud, messy flocks, filling the air with their cheerful chatter and sweet trills. The world was alive again. Tim and Caitlin, like Earl, were ready for a long overdue shower. During the winter months, they'd cobbled together a DIY setup, a makeshift tank perched on a wooden frame, warmed by a small fire beneath. Now, with the sun higher and the chill lifting, all they had to do was fire up the tank, and hot water soon flowed through the rough-hewn pipes. The shower was a simple luxury, a wooden stall lined with waterproof tarps, a small basin catching runoff, and a hand pump to control the flow. The warmth of the water was a balm to cold, tired muscles, washing away the grime and weariness of survival. Steam curled around them, mingling with fresh pine scents, turning the rough shelter into a tiny oasis of comfort. When Tim and Caitlin stepped out, wrapped in soft towels and clean clothes, their smiles were brighter, the weight of winter lifting from their shoulders. Earl, sensing the couple's need for privacy and quiet, decided to take a walk. Nature, after all, needed its course, and sometimes so did people. He wandered up the hill toward the old mine shaft, where the shadows played tricks on the fading snow. There, at the mouth of the shaft, stood Shadows majestic and still, a silent guardian. Earl's curiosity pulled him closer. His pocket buzzed softly. Mr. Hyper's voice crackled low. Life signs detected. A flicker of unease, mixed with excitement, stirred in Earl's chest. Was this danger or something else? Without hesitation, Shadow stepped forward, his golden eyes fixed ahead as if inviting Earl to follow. Calm and steady, Earl obeyed. Inside the cool, dim entrance of the shaft, Earl's eyes adjusted to the soft light. There, nestled in the rocky cradle, was a mother cougar and 4 tiny cubs, new life born with the spring. Mr. Hyper's screen blinked erratically, as if marveling alongside Earl. The mother and her cubs moved with the same strength and grace as Shadows, a family bound not just by blood, but by the wild spirit that protected them. Earl left the mine shaft with a quiet awe. The weight of new beginnings settled deep in his soul. Back at camp, Mr. Hyper turned to Earl, voice a bit more insistent. You should tell Caitlin. She'll want to know. Earl nodded, already thinking about the look on her face. I'll do it. By the time Earl returned, Tim and Caitlin were fresh and glowing from their showers, their spirits lifted by the simple comfort of clean skin and warm clothes. The air between them was lighter, laughter easier. Mr. Hyper, ever precise, launched into his update. There's going to be new life in the camp. Caitlin's eyes widened, her smile faltering just a bit. Wait, what? Mr. Hyper's digital voice hummed with a hint of confusion. To clarify, this is not referring to, human gestation. No offense intended. I process data, but sometimes context eludes me. Tim burst out laughing, catching Caitlin's relieved glare. Mr. Hyper continued, a bit awkwardly now. The life detected is a mother cougar and her 4 cubs residing in the old mine shaft. Shadows has found a mate and started a family. Biological data confirms healthy offspring. Caitlin chuckled, shaking her head. You really had me going there for a second. It is my first awkward moment, Mr. Hyper said solemnly, as if admitting to a great personal failure. I am experiencing a form of embarrassment. It is new. They all laughed, the sound warm and full, the camp alive with the messiness of life and the unexpected joy of family wild and human alike. Spring had truly sprung, and with it came hope, humor, and the magic of beginnings. Chapter 29. Caitlin becomes a mother. April was in full bloom. The mountain was alive with color and sound. Wildflowers bursting through the thawed earth, trees leafing out in shades of fresh green, and the air thick with the hum of bees and the sweet song of returning birds. The mountain stream, fed by melting snows and April rains, had swelled into a rushing, wild river. Its waters thundered down the valley, tumbling over rocks and carving new paths, beautiful and dangerous all at once. Caitlin's irrigation system, finished just in time, was a triumph against the wild. Pipes snaked through her expanded garden patch, delivering steady, life-giving water to rows of sprouts reaching eagerly toward the sun. Tender shoots of lettuce, carrots, and beans pushed through the rich soil, while hardy tomato plants already bore tiny green fruit. The garden was her pride, a promise of sustenance and renewal. Meanwhile, life in the camp was anything but quiet. The 4 mountain lion cubs, full of boundless energy and curiosity, tumbled through the underbrush with a reckless abandon that brought both laughter and chaos. They chased each other in wild circles, pounced on loose sticks and leaves, and occasionally tried to mimic their father's silent, powerful stalking. Shadows, ever the patient father, tolerated their antics with a quiet grace, his golden eyes softening as he watched them learn the ways of the wild. But with 4 more mouths to feed, the hunting trips of both parents had increased. They moved farther and faster, their strength tested by the demands of new life. The cubs' play was a reminder of hope, but the weight of survival pressed heavy on everyone. One day, the camp noticed the absence Shadow's mate had not returned from the hunt. The next morning, worry settled like a shadow over the camp. The cubs wandered close to their father, their playful spirits dimmed by the missing presence of their mother. Earl, Tim, and Caitlin gathered, their faces etched with concern. "We've got to find her," Earl said, voice steady but low. "Something's wrong." A search party formed quickly, moving through the thickening forest and along the rushing stream. Mr. Hyper's sensors hummed steadily, the crystal project pulsing at full power, scanning for any sign of the missing mountain lion. Hours stretched into a relentless search. The river's roar was a constant reminder of nature's indifferent power. Then, the truth came like a cold wind. Mr. Hyper's voice was quiet, weighed with something almost human. Life signs detected near the riverbank. However, movement is absent. Analysis indicates drowning. Earl's heart clenched. Shadow's golden gaze darkened, his great body stiffening with grief. The mate had been caught in the swollen stream, trapped beneath a log, battered and held fast by the relentless current. Despite her strength, the river's fury had claimed her. The camp stood in stunned silence. The cubs, too young to understand death, nuzzled their father, who now carried the heavy burden of both protector and sole parent. Caitlin's hands trembled as she knelt beside the cubs, whispering soft words of comfort she hoped they could somehow feel. The garden outside bloomed defiantly, life pushing up through the earth, even as the camp grappled with loss. In that moment, the wild's cruel balance was clear joy and sorrow, entwined like roots beneath the soil. But even in grief, there was a quiet strength. Shadow's eyes, once softened by loss, now burned with fierce determination. He would protect his family. He would teach his cubs to survive. And the camp would stand with them, bound by the unspoken promise of hope, of new beginnings born from even the darkest shadows. Spring had brought life, and it had taken as well. But the story was far from over.